evidence shows the whole truth about what or who NASA found on the moon.
Black holes are among the most fascinating objects in our universe.
Let's take a look at NASA's recent and mysterious discoveries that have raised more questions than answers.
NASA citizen scientists have recently discovered an CWISE J 1249.
Curious? Let's dig in. Number 1. Hearing the black holes merging. Gravitational waves can occur when two black holes merge together. Einstein proposed the theory a century ago, but these waves have now been observed. The scientists were only able to detect the higher frequencies of the gravitational wave spectrum. The lower frequencies might need a different method, but here is why it is interesting. Spotting two black holes merging into one another is almost impossible. Their tight orbits are too close to one another to separate one black hole from the other.
Another example of events that could cause a gravitational wave is when a star explodes. This is known as a supernova.
But when the gravitational wave spectrum came into view, it made the researchers gleeful, because they need not look into the black holes to see if they are merging anymore. Instead, they have proof now that allows them to it through the waves if the merger is happening. Number 2. Lunar caves. A satellite that has been orbiting the moon for 2009 made a startling discovery.
Researchers believe they've discovered a location for a possible future base on the moon.
It spotted a lunar cave on the moon that could house humans. It has a large opening with various walls and a floor that stretches underground. It could possibly support humans in long-term exploration of the moon. Number 3. Saturn's icy moon. For many years, scientists were confused. Why did Saturn have water in its upper atmosphere? Where was it coming from? This mystery isn't a mystery anymore. The source behind this water is Saturn's moon itself. Enceladus, the 6th largest moon on the planet, is the one changing the chemical composition of Saturn. What's fascinating is that Enceladus is the only moon in the entire solar system to have this bizarre role on its shoulders. Enceladus has an icy surface from the outside, but it is an illusion for what's going on inside the icy moon. The interior is active, especially near the moon's south pole. In this region, there are special fissures called the tiger stripes. They form icy geysers that throw jets of water vapors into space. And it isn't a tiny jet either. Enceladus roughly spews 550 pounds of water every second through the tiger stripes. Even though the moon is moving inconsistently around Saturn, the water jets are consistently expelled. These vapors create a donut-shaped ring around Saturn that's roughly 10 times the radius of the planet. This explains the 14-year-long mystery. Number 4. The other side of Pluto. If something's pretty far from the sun, it should be dead and cold, right? But Pluto here defied those odds. A spacecraft that was sent 9 years ago was finally ready to take data from Pluto. The scientists hit a snag when the spacecraft ran dead silent 10 days before it could reach Pluto.
And we have this on New Horizons because the spacecraft is so far from the Earth. Getting a signal back is so weak.
Luckily, things sprang back into action just in time, and the scientific world was rewarded with the best images of Pluto. But it only raised more questions. A huge heart-shaped region was spotted in the middle of the Encounter Hemisphere. Just so you know, the Encounter Hemisphere is the region around the planet where its gravity could alter the spacecraft's path. The left side of this heart-shaped region was unusually smooth, and that isn't possible unless there was some active geology going on around there. That only adds more to the mystery. To find active geology on Pluto, which is a cold planet, was definitely a big curtain drop moment. Number 5. The Brightest Burst. Recently, scientists discovered the brightest gamma-ray burst ever recorded. When a massive star dies, it collapses into a black hole. This releases jets of energy called gamma-ray bursts, which are the most powerful form of light in the universe. It is like the first and brightest flash you can spot of that event. It is like a warning signal that is followed by the supernova, which is a huge bright explosion. The brightest explosion, also called the BOAT, happened around 2 billion light-years away from Earth. It was one of the most energetic events humans have ever seen.
Gamma-ray burst blasted from only 500 light-years away. It would change the game completely. The radiation that would rain down on Earth would destroy our ozone layer.
The scientists used to speculate that heavy metals are produced by the collapse of such massive stars. But recent observations from the BO8's data claim that highly energetic gamma-ray bursts may not carry heavy elements. It still could be that other gamma-ray bursts might still produce the elements, but more research is needed. Number 6. Venus may have signs of life. With clouds made of sulfuric acid and extremely high temperatures, it seems impossible to think there would be life on Venus. But scientists have recently made some interesting claims. They have found proof of phosphine in Venus's clouds and traces of ammonia too.
Phosphine's not a natural byproduct of any chemical process. It takes energy to make it, so you don't spontaneously get it.
Phosphine is produced by decaying organic matter or bacteria, just like ammonia that pops up after plant and animal decomposition. Phosphine was also found on Saturn, but Saturn is a big gas giant. To find these gases on a rocky planet like Venus is remarkable. While it is unclear why and how these gases were produced on Venus, it might hint at signs of life. Nonetheless, more research is needed on the subject. Number 7. Andromeda stars in Milky Way. It has been discovered that the Andromeda galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy are on their way to colliding with one another.
The stars will settle into new orbits within the newly formed galaxy, which will likely take on an elliptical shape rather than the spiral structures of the original galaxies.
However, a recent study shows that the galaxies may have already started merging. Here is what happened. Stars can get ejected out of the galaxy if they interact with black holes. They can move at a hypervelocity and raid the intergalactic space. Many objects that go through the same pattern. This is what forced the scientists to calculate the trajectories of over 18 million hypervelocity stars. What they found was fascinating. They think it is highly likely that the Andromeda stars may have distributed along the center of the Milky Way. But the question is, how many stars could have possibly escaped the Andromeda galaxy and wandered into the Milky Way? They think that there are as few as 4 stars and as many as 4,000 Andromeda stars within a radius of 50 kpc from the Milky Way's center. If this is the case, the next step is to detect and identify them. Number 8. Sun has auroras too. It was believed that only planets and moons have auroras, but a recent study shows that they also happen on the Sun. The auroras on Earth occur when solar storms temporarily weaken the planet's magnetic shield. This allows radiation from the Sun to excite gas molecules in the upper atmosphere. But the Sun's auroras are a bit different. Experts think that they are created by electrons that are accelerated at high speeds along the Sun's magnetic field. Number 9. Heliosphere's bizarre behavior. The heliosphere is like a giant bubble that surrounds the solar system. It is like a protective shield that protects all the planets in the solar system from high-energy particles in space. Inside the heliosphere, the solar winds are quite evident. These winds push against the interstellar medium.
Solar wind doesn't just stop at the Earth, it's out in space. It keeps going. It blows past the inner planets.
Gas and dust found between the stars and create a boundary that marks the edge of the Sun's influence. This boundary is called the heliopause, and beyond the heliopause exists interstellar space that is not influenced by the sun. For years, scientists thought that the heliopause was static, but the voyagers proved that the boundary is very ever-moving. They also spotted energetic neutral atoms, or ENAs, that were created when the solar winds and the interstellar medium interact. They knew that the boundary was moving, but recently they made a shocking discovery. The heliopause is changing dramatically over a short period of time. Scientists spotted the ENAs brightening that showed asymmetries in the heliopause, and they were not in line with the models. Scientists have no clue why this is happening, but they plan on getting more answers through a new satellite, interstellar mapping, and acceleration probe expected to launch in the year 2025. Number 10. Uranus's secret. Uranus is a massive ice giant. It is the coldest planet in our solar system.
Icy temperatures, dropping as low as -370 degrees Fahrenheit, are largely influenced by the planet's composition.
But that is not the strangest thing about it. Recently, it was found that Uranus has rings. But here is the catch. Instead of orbiting around at its center, they were moving up and over the top of the planet. Why is that? Ever since the beginning, everything in the solar system has moved in the same direction. From the outermost ancient cloud of the solar system to the planets that we see today, they all orbit the sun in the same counterclockwise direction. But this is not the case for Venus and Uranus, which orbit the sun in the opposite direction. Uranus's secret is even darker. Experts think that an Earth-sized object must have hit Uranus and tipped it over to its side. This is probably also why the planet is cold and dead. Number 11. Saturn's rings are young. Scientists suggest that Saturn's rings are quite young, only about 400 million years old. On the other hand, Saturn itself is about 4.5 billion years old. The scientists discovered this bizarre secret through a pretty basic particle: dust. The Earth's solar system has tiny grains of rocky material that often rush past on an almost constant basis. Sometimes it leaves behind a tiny layer of dust on planets. This dust was also found on Saturn's icy rings. They believed that if they could figure out how rapidly the layer of dust settled on Saturn's rings, they could answer the burning question. The group was right. They started on the process that went on for 13 long years. They had finally cracked the code. In these years, they collected only about 163 grains. This hinted that the rings were younger than the planet itself. Now, it doesn't answer how the rings were formed, but that might have an answer in the near future. Number 12. Do aliens live on the moon? There is a conspiracy theory that NASA knows of alien bases on the moon. There is a NASA mission called the Gemini mission. Its transcript shows that the astronaut saw a peculiar object in space that had big arms. But when he got close to taking a picture, the sun got in the way and he lost it.
Future missions expose the truth behind astronauts and UFO contact.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Experts believe that NASA started using code words for such objects after the Gemini mission. The actual audio of the Apollo 8 mission, with its first successful orbit around the moon, tells a similar story. You can hear the astronaut claiming that he spotted a Santa Claus, a code word for seeing UFOs. When man first landed on the moon with Apollo 11, UFO experts believed that they made contact with aliens. In the audio transmission of the astronauts, 2 minutes are missing. Unofficial radio transmissions cracked the mystery, claiming that Aldrin and Armstrong saw UFOs on the moon. What's interesting is that several NASA officials back up this claim, saying that it was a genuine transmission from the astronauts. Plus, when the astronauts planted the American flag, they also left behind a couple of objects. a gold olive branch of peace, and a silicon disk with recorded messages. It all suggests that NASA knew exactly what they were doing when they sent men to Earth. What do you think? Number 13. The unbelievably large structures. Recently, NASA discovered two objects in space that cannot possibly exist. One of them is the giant arc.
And that's actually the size of the unusual structure that was discovered back in 2021, that the researchers referred to as the giant arc,
which NASA claims is nearly 3.3 billion light-years across. The second one is the Big Ring, or Big Donut, which is more massive than the giant arc and is 9.2 billion light-years across. So, if you were seeing the Big Ring directly in the night sky, it would be like seeing the full moon, but 15 times larger in size. The only problem is that the universe is nearly 13.8 billion years old. So, anything beyond 1.2 billion light-years across should not exist. Things might grow larger over time, but it cannot be the case right now, as per the cosmological principle. This size limit was recently brought into view after calculations of objects around the universe, but not even a year later, these objects objected to the size limit. A bigger problem is that these gigantic objects are pretty close to one another. Nobody has an explanation as to how these objects were formed, why they are so massive, and how they are close to each other. Number 14. Is Earth moving fast? Scientists recently discovered that the Earth is moving faster than usual.
In a not very recent history, the days on Earth used to be twice as fast.
Its speed has increased to the point that we may lose a whole second in the near future. It might not sound like a lot in hindsight, but this is a major event in Earth's history. Around 600 million years ago, an average day on Earth was around 21 hours. But instead of slowing down, it is now spinning faster, and nobody knows why. Number 15. The solar maximum. By the year 2025, the Sun will experience a major peak in its activity. After every 11 years, the Sun's magnetic field gets tangled up and then flips, turning the North Pole into the South Pole, and vice versa. This is when the solar activity is at its peak, but the one that is expected to happen next year may be the most powerful one that the Earth has ever seen. That means the Earth will see more of the northern lights, and there might be disruptions in satellite operations. Number 16. Magnets and meteorites. There are a bunch of meteorites on Earth from Mars. The researchers were able to tell the difference through magnets. The meteorite material has a great tendency to strongly attract magnets. It became the go-to method for researchers to differentiate between rocks of meteorite origin and the ones that aren't made up of meteorite material. They simply used magnets, and that became a solid identifier. But here is when it got strange. The scientists discovered that using the magnets on such rocks erased their magnetic past. It reorients a rock's microscopic grains and erases their original orientation. Mars lost its magnetic field nearly 3.7 billion years ago, but the rocks in the pristine state offered a time capsule of the Mars magnetic field when the rocks were first formed. Sadly, many rocks lost their memory because of the use of magnets, except only a few. Experts are working hard to learn more about the Martian meteorites. Number 17. Avoiding the Big Catastrophe. Over 2,500 hazardous objects have been identified in the year 2022. Out of this large number, there is one object called Bennu that has all the attention right now. This object is around 4.5 billion years old, and its estimated orbit is quite close to Earth's orbit. The size of Bennu is roughly around 490 meters in diameter. Its size is nearly 73 million metric tons and is substantial enough to cause continent-wide damage on Earth. According to the speed at which it is traveling, it could create an impact 200,000 times stronger than Hiroshima. While that may send you packing, it is not as scary as it looks. Bennu is the object that's the most likely to hit Earth, in the late 22nd century, but its chances are slim, 1 in 2,700. But NASA isn't taking any chances. It has been working for years to divert Bennu's trajectory. Number 18. The Old Galaxies. The James Webb Telescope has made many discoveries, but this one is pretty shocking. The scientists found a spectrum of an old galaxy observed only after 290 million years of the Big Bang. That's a redshift of 14. A redshift is basically the distance of the object measured from us. The greater the redshift, the more distant it is from us. But these new galaxies are also far brighter than what a distant galaxy with a higher redshift should be. It means that they are hundreds to millions of times the size of the Sun. To put into perspective, our universe is 13.8 billion years old, but these galaxies are around 13.5 billion years old. That cannot and should not be happening as per modern astrophysics. These new galaxies are unusually old and bright. They suggest that they are quite different from the galaxies that our models have predicted about the early universe. It could be because the scientists observed only a small chunk of the sky, but the discovery is still pretty astonishing. It has left the experts baffled with questions. Number 19. Is time travel now possible? Wouldn't it be crazy if time travel existed? That's what the scientists believe too, and they haven't stopped figuring out how to make it a reality. Recently, a few researchers published a paper, and they believe that ring wormholes can make time travel happen. A wormhole is basically a cosmic bridge that shortens the distance between 2 points and allows both energy and matter to pass through in a short time. They are believed to act as portals to another universe, and black holes are the culprit behind the formation of wormholes. But ring wormholes do not need black holes, and they wouldn't be three-dimensional. The idea is that you need a string of negative matter that has neither been discovered nor created as of yet. Plus, doing so would create a time machine, and not just a universe-to-universe transport. Sadly, both wormholes and ring wormholes are theoretical objects. Number 20. The 10th planet. A bunch of scientists recently calculated mathematically and offered proof that there is a giant planet orbiting in an unusually elongated path in the outer solar system. The researchers believe that this planet is equal to the size of Neptune and circles the Sun in a highly elongated orbit, extending beyond Pluto. To put it into context, its size is 10 times bigger than that of Earth and orbits 20 times farther from the Sun than Neptune does on average. To explain how elongated its orbit actually is, hear this. The planet takes 10,000 to 20,000 Earth years to go full circle around the Sun a single time. Neptune takes merely 165 years. Number 21. Filaments of the Milky Way. At the heart of the Milky Way, there is the galaxy's massive black hole called the Sagittarius A.
The first black hole to be ever imaged is located at the center of an elliptical galaxy, Messier 87.
Back in the 1980s, strange vertical filaments were spotted near the black hole. They were stretched for more than 100 light-years. However, a recent study shows that there is a second type of filament around the black hole. The horizontal filaments are short and run parallel instead of the perpendicular orientation of the vertical filaments. That's not all. There are reports that the Milky Way is not the only host of these filaments. There are other galaxies where these filaments are found. Number 22. The strangest hypervelocity object. A small object was found to be speeding out of the Milky Way at blazing speeds. The scientists initially found the object as a small blur on the screen, but upon further inspection, they called this object a brown dwarf or a low-mass star. While objects moving with hypervelocity in space, there weren't any objects of low mass. Number 23. The large black hole. Scientists have found a black hole so massive that it probably eats the equivalent of the Sun per day. Just to put that into context, the Sun has a diameter 109 times bigger than Earth. This large black hole is 17 billion times larger than the Sun. But that's not all. They also think that it is the fastest-growing black hole ever recorded.
Scientists can only guess how they form, but we do know they exist at the center of just about every large galaxy.
Number 24. The mysterious star. Kepler's job is simple: finding planets outside the solar system. But one discovery shook the scientific world. Kepler was used to identify planets by detecting transits. This is a short time frame, when the planet crosses in front of the star and blocks a tiny bit of starlight. The time frame is shown as a dip in the light curve. The bigger the dip, the bigger the planet's size. Jupiter shows a 1% drop in the star's brightness, while Earth's signal was barely visible on the data. In the data given by Kepler, there was a mysterious star whose dip was just as similar to Jupiter, but the problem was that its dip lasted for a week, although the transits were seen for only a few hours. That's not all. The dip was not as symmetrical as Jupiter's, suggesting that this mysterious star was not circular. Number 25. Super-Earth. Recently, NASA confirmed that there is a new planet, about 1.5 times wider than Earth.
They are usually rocky and have solid surfaces, unlike the gas giants that have thick atmospheres.
It is a special discovery because it is in the habitable zone of its star. This means that water could form on the planet. What's even more fascinating is that it takes only 19 days for this planet to orbit around its sun. That means a year of only 19 days, instead of the 365 days on Earth. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.